Okay, welcome. I think my lighting is in a different place. Anyway, hey, it's Dai-Shihan Miller here, and we're here with this week's episode of KUDEN Radio. So, look, see, it popped up magically. Look at that. That's what happens when I have James in the background. Anyway, I hope everyone is doing well. So, again, we're going to lead this one off with a story, and then again, I've been continuing on with my own research and not really research. I guess it is, but it's my own study. Right? I think I've mentioned this in the past. If you're brand new to this, then you won't maybe feel like it's redundant. But very often, and I suggest that my students do it as well, I will pull books or resources or videos or whatever that I have watched a dozen times before or that I've read more than I can count, and I'll reread them. But what I do is I resist ego's tendency to skim because, well, I've read it before, right? Or to skip over paragraphs or things like that. And the reason for that is I want to come at it as much like a white belt as possible. I know I'm not, but um, I want to come at it as though I've never seen it before. I've never read it before. Um, because as we would say in Mikyo, I have not. Right. Past versions of me have, but the me today has not. And what that means is I'm in a different place. I'm in a different place experience wise. I'm in a different place understanding wise. I'm a different place skill wise. And so what will happen more often than not is lessons will jump off the page or off the video that uh, part of me has to wonder how I missed that before. I mean, I know how I missed it now, but the first time it happened, first dozen time it happened, it was just it was always a shock. But again, I'm still going through this book by Hatsumi Sensei, Ninpo Wisdom for Life, and I'm taking it slowly. Um, there's short sections. There's chapters and whatnot, but sometimes the easiest read can have the most profound impact, and sometimes the most extensive writing can just be the same simple point rehashed. Right. I once listened to a vice presidential candidate. I'm old, so this was decades ago. Um, Back when they had primaries for vice president here in the United States, um, and it wasn't just ad hoc chosen, but I heard maybe it wasn't a primary, maybe it was just a debate. Maybe that's what it was, and uh, a journalist had asked this one candidate why he was qualified for the job. And he must have talked for 10 minutes. And even though I was young, I think I was, I don't know, 19, 20. The gist that I pulled out of it after 10 minutes of him talking was I'm qualified for the job because I'm qualified for the job. But he sure filled in 10 minutes. So, anyway, so the lesson is the topic for this episode is pulled not pulled from it, it's inspired by it, so I'm going to reference back to it as we go, but this is something that is near and dear to my heart because it's something that I had to battle with. Okay. And that is in transmuting or transforming weakness into power, right? And so I'll talk about where I got this originally from a Hatsumi Sensei lesson way back. I was still a white belt, and how confusing it was when I first got it, but how broad and how deep it is at this point. All right, and hopefully it'll help some other folks to not make cardinal mistakes that they may not know that they're making that undermines their maybe not their power in and of itself, because they could be very, very skilled. They could be very powerful in and of themselves, but other people's perception of that power, um, and from the place where I was coming from, it was actually a form of self-sabotage, and it prolonged the road to any kind of success. So anyway, we'll take a look at that and more when we get back. So the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. All right, and we are back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so if you're listening audio only, post live production of this, you too, right? You're included as well. Some of the things that I may mention may be time sensitive, so if it's past a certain date or whatever, just ignore that part. But otherwise, we're going to jump right into things. So let's just start off by seeing who's in early and who's already here, or who's actually kind of spoken up. We do these things live for those of you who are new to this, and here we are, still enduring, right? 259 episodes in. I think we've pretty much blown the bell curve. We're on the good side of things. So anyway, James-san, who do we have? Who's on? I have James filtering things on the back end, so I don't know, some jackwagon hijacking our chat feed. Anyway, what do we have? Who do we have? What do we have?
Jared and Terrence has checked in so far.
Jared and Terrence, awesome. A couple of regulars. Terrence is one of my inner circle guys. Terrence, I promise, now that I'm through the anniversary weekend and all that stuff, I will respond to the what you title that? Your reporting for duty email. I'm a little bit behind on things, but I'll get caught up with that, and you and I can have a chat, and then we'll keep on moving. So is that it? That's what we have. Those two are checked in. Awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so we're not talking about like fancy moves this time or whatever. So I don't expect that the numbers live wise will be as high. We tend to get more of those on the recording side of things, but who knows? I could be surprised as we move along. All right, so let me kind of start this off with a story. It's not all that in depth or whatever. I just remember way back as a white belt, this art, when I say that it saved me, it almost sounds like I'm like at some religious convention or something, like, ooh, yeah. But I'm not kidding, right? My martial arts teachers were the mentors and sometimes the father figures that I didn't get blessed with early on. And I often talk about the lessons that I got from the father figure. He did adopt me, so I guess became dad. But anyway, I had a conversation with a student one time. We were discussing these things, and I think perhaps we were discussing my origin story in episode 68. That was the reboot of KUDEN after about a year and a half hiatus. Had to make some changes and shifting around. We changed the format of this. James and I don't banter back and forth nearly as much as Eric White and I did, but he and I did it literally like a radio show out of a radio station. Go in on a Sunday and put one or two episodes in the can, as they say, and made it like a morning drive time kind of thing. But either way, right? So what I decided back then was when I was decided to restart it, right, in this kind of a format. There were a bunch of episodes where I did it solo, yeah, and then you came on, James. Uh, but just told my backstory. And so anyway, Mike and I were discussing this one time over lunch, and he said, it's amazing how two people can go through very, very similar circumstances, and one person can be traumatized for life, like completely wrecked, incapable of doing anything, and the other person just turn that around and turn it into something else. And me too. Me too. What a lot of people may not know is that my origin story, in some ways, overlaps Hatsumi Sensei's. His father was an alcoholic. He was great when he was sober, but was quite abusive and whatnot when he was not. So he learned ninja skills very early. Learned to be stealthy. Learned to be um, manipulative and to push the right buttons so as to not trigger the monster and those kind of things. And if you don't know that, some things make some folks strong, and the same things make some folks not so much. But you know what? Um, I could see myself. I can imagine myself in a very different place, having a very different life had it not been for some of the teachers I've had in this art, including Hatsumi Sensei. So, but the lesson from way back was on limitations, because one of the things that drew me to this art was the constant reference to becoming a no limits person, to uh, understanding one's limitations, not accepting them, but actually pushing them to find out where the limitation actually was, and not just as it was commonly defined by most people, or what we might have come to believe that that's it, I'm stuck with it, those kind of things. And so, you know, you push it, right? The whole idea of enduring and this no limits person was to push your limitations until you actually hit the wall, um, where, yep, that's it. Either as a human being or age wise or whatever, right? But not just accepting that that's what it was, because that's what everybody comes to believe, right? The fat old bald guy can't possibly be, good at self defense or know what he's talking about or whatever. Um, I wasn't always a fat old bald guy, but anyway, um, uh, but that was the omote side of the lesson. That wasn't the full lesson, right? The Uda side, right? The hidden side, the back side of the lesson was that that wasn't it for the limitations, right? That the full lesson was to take those things that were actual limitations and to be able to flip them and to be able to present them as strengths, to be able to use them as strengths. Okay. That was kind of perplexing because, like most of us, I was raised in a culture where, your strengths are your strengths, your weaknesses are your weaknesses, and you shouldn't let the two meet. Right. But the idea was, out of this Kyuji's Tenkan Ho, right, this disguising or juxtapositioning of truth and falsehood, was to be able to present even your strengths, right? Present your strengths as weaknesses, your weaknesses as strengths. One, it keeps everybody, even those closest to you, ever so slightly off balance, right? Which makes it very difficult for them to gain momentum quickly if they decide to attack. Um, you become less predictable, right? Uh, but also, it it allows you, it allows the practitioner, right? The ninja well, we'll just say it, right? The ninja to strategically manipulate or control a situation, because the opponent will never know what's true. Will never know what's right. Is this really a truth? Is this really what's going on, or is this a deception? Is this, it's like uh, telling somebody, um, I always lie, right? Everything that I say, everything that I ever tell you is a lie. Okay. And then finishing up by saying, and that's the truth. Okay. Puts that little piece in there, right? Well, if you always lie, then telling me that that's the truth, well, then that's a lie. But then wait, does that make the statement that you always lie the truth? Or, right? It just gets a little, right? Makes things foggy, which is great, right? But the other thing it does is it forces us, if we're serious about really pushing this stuff and not just learning a different styles martial arts moves, right? It pushes us to face our own uh, self-doubt, our own demons, um, our own belief system about who and what we are, who and what others are, right? What and how the world works, those kind of things, right? So anyway, so one of the things we're going to dive into here is this insecurity complex, okay? um, that a lot of people don't believe they have. And I'm not here to tell anybody that they do or they don't or whatever, but uh, based on my study and my research and whatnot, and again, I'll read from a little passage here from Hatsumi Sensei's book, so nobody thinks that I'm plagiarizing or whatever. Read from this one little section, um, and together it should present some symptoms, right? But not just symptoms, okay, that kind of reflect back. And if we're honest about our study and our practice and whatnot, whether it's just you're only doing ninpo, right? You're going through the Seishin Teki or whatever, or you're adding in Mikyo, whatever path you're on, um, it it changes things. But it's not just the symptoms that allow us to diagnose things properly, get in there, fix things and whatnot. But they also produce certain types of consequences that, again, people just normally accept, right? As martial artists, as fighters, as the tough guy kind of thing. But they don't realize that. I mean, they see this themselves in the light of a defender, but they don't realize that they're actually creating it. They're creating the situation, right? Um, so, anyway, that being said, before I pull up my notes here, James, anybody else sign in? Anybody check in?
Just Jimmy. Say konbanwa.
Konbanwa. All right. So, all right, let's do this. Let me bring up my notes here so I don't miss anything. I don't inadvertently. Why is my screen not doing what it's supposed to be doing? I don't know. All right, James, can you still see me? Everything's still good?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think my laptop is in need of being switched out for the new one. I think I've pushed this as far as it can go. So anyway, so again, the Kyutsu Tenkan lesson was to present your strengths as weaknesses, your weaknesses as strengths. Right? There's I can't remember if this was based on things I've synthesized from Hatsumi Sensei or things I've synthesized from things I've picked up here and there from lessons that came from Takamasa Sensei or it's just a kind of a synthesis kind of thing. But there's this strategic the strategic mindset, right? What you hide inside becomes what the world cannot take from you. Right. So if they don't know it exists, it's very difficult to attack. It's also very difficult to defend against, right? Um, but there are these other things that some people wear on their sleeves. Some people can't not mention. Some people tell what their internal belief system is by the causes they jump on, by the approach they take at communicating their beliefs, browbeating, whatever, the things that they choose to talk about, and right, while we can do whatever, right, we have the power of choice, right? We design our lives with the power of our choices. Okay, never ever forget that. What's that old saying? We're free to choose, but we're never free from the consequences of those choices. Okay, so now there may be some things that we didn't choose. I know in my early life, lots of things I didn't choose. Like I didn't choose the stepfather, right? I didn't choose what area of the world or whatever that I would be born into. At least if I did, I don't remember, right? So we'll just let it go at that, right? But it's not about like the hand that we were dealt. I mean, in part it is. It is about the hand that we were dealt. And I'm not saying that some people don't have an easier path or an easier road ahead of them because they were born into a supportive family or they were born into a common excuse is more money or whatever. And other people were not, right? Other people have a harder path. I can certainly relate to the harder path. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't feed, or we should be feeding the problem. Okay, so let's start there. Okay, well, I'm going to call this the problem hidden in plain sight. Okay, so most people struggle with self-doubt, inferiority complexes, past trauma, of whatever sort. Could have been heartbreak, could have been a financial downturn, it could have been an abusive parent or whatever it was, right? But that what they end up doing is they end up covering it with bravado, right? They cover it with boasting, overcompensation, those kind of things, right? Hatsumi Sensei once used a phrase, and as a matter of fact, it shows up in this book again. So I'm going to jump to this in just a minute. There's this old quote that he borrowed to make a point, right? That becomes, I hate the word destiny, but it becomes almost a foregone conclusion, right? The quote is, "As the boy, so the man." Okay, girls, if you're on, as the girl, so the woman. What this means, or what it points to, is early life wounds, experiences, lessons, all these things, right? Could be lack of affection, could be lack of support, could be, they had a lot of failures, or um, uh, in whatever realm they tried to get into, the competition was stiff. And so therefore, that somehow did something to their confidence, all kinds of things, right? These create some subconscious traits, subconscious habit patterns, right? That end up sabotaging later success, right? And sometimes these aren't experiences. Sometimes, well, everything's an experience, but sometimes it's a flat out lesson from somebody, right? This is life, whatever. I don't know why I used a Southern accent, but we're just taught that, well, who said, well, your grandpappy taught me, and whatever. Okay. I remember hearing from my stepfather over and over and over again, right? If it was good enough for my grandfather, it was good enough for my dad, then it's good enough for me. And um, I watched him, and I was very young when it happened. He was like 32 years old. I watched him vomiting into a bucket all evening one time because he had chosen to go to the dentist and had all of his teeth extracted. And he didn't have any dentistry problems. He didn't have any problems. Right? And the reason he did it was because, well, his mom and dad lost all their teeth and his grandparents lost all their teeth. So, and they all had false teeth. So he was just going to get ahead of the game and have all of his teeth yanked out. So, he's going to end up with false teeth anyway. So he would just do that. So we're not going to talk about how, you know, uh, tooth care, oral hygiene, that kind of stuff was rather shitty. And he grew up dirt poor. He had a sixth grade education, dropped out of school in sixth grade because he needed to go to work and help make money for the family. Okay. I don't think that was legal even back then, but who knows? So interesting, huh? That's where I'll leave that. Okay. But there was just this acceptance. Okay? And so things can really, really kind of go sideways sometimes, right? Because these things get fully entrenched. Somebody taught us, but they were taught by somebody, and they were taught by somebody. And this belief system just kind of gets passed down, whether, that's our class of people, that's our type of people, that's our religion of people, that's our, um, like, there's no change. There's no possibility of change, right? Again, I think it's interesting, right? And so these loops can get set up. And again, we desire lives through the power of our choices. Okay. But if one of our beliefs is we don't have very many choices, or we don't have any choices at all, um, then we have a problem. Okay. A bigger problem than we think we have. One of the early lessons I got, and it since I had talked about this a little bit, this is in the scrolls. You'll see a recurring theme within the scrolls. Um, I just call it the power of three. In the Gyokuryu, there's this 3 in 1, 1 in 3 principle. But like with balance breaking, Kuzushi, right? In the Tagagi Yoshinryu scrolls, I believe, there is this principle, right? When you're breaking balance, the ideal is to break 3 or more lines of balance either at the same time or consecutively, like really close together. Okay. When we're doing kansetsu waza, right? Joint locks, to lock 3 or more points at the same time. Okay. Because what it does is these are all not contradicting, but contraindicating kind of thing. They go in opposite directions, or they go in different directions. So while he can escape from one, it's easy to find a way out, right? Do a ukemi roll, whatever. Getting away from two is more difficult, and especially if those two locks are going in different directions. Where this is part of where is it, James? Mod 5, I think, where we start throw flow, and then we start to move into applying. Well, this is second, third dan. We start applying multiple locks at the same time. Okay, and so because the body and the mind is wired to move the body 180 degrees away from threat or danger or pain, right? Damage. Uh, what we end up doing is putting things on that he can't resist or try to escape one without amplifying the other. Okay? Same thing in the other direction. So it's a cool little tidbit I picked up by watching Hatsumi Sensei do what he does. But if we can do 3 or more, that'd be awesome. Okay. Like if we're doing a gyakute, right? And knowing the structure of the wrist, right? So again, I'll try to describe this as much as possible for those of you who will be listening later on audio only on the podcast services. But if we're doing Kansetsu Waza to the wrist, okay, a lot of folks don't break it down this much. They understand omote gyaku, ura gyaku, hon gyaku, those kind of things. But to understand the wrist structure, that this joint is a universal joint, and that it has a wide range of motion. Generally speaking, it can be broken down into 3 basic movements, very much like the joystick in an airplane and how it would move, right? So again, those who are watching video wise, that you're watching live or on YouTube or something later, you'll be able to see this. Those of you on audio only have to kind of act this out, on your own, right? But if you hold your arm out with your hand extended, right, open and extended, and then palm down, okay, just so it's just parallel to the floor, parallel to the desk or whatever surface you have right in front of you, right? And so if you lift the fingers and the whole hand, right, from the wrist up and down, right, it's just this up and down kind of thing, almost like you're waving, right? Um, in aviator terms, it's called pitch. Okay, so up and down, right? So that's one direction where things can be locked, right? We call that take ori. Ura take ori is where the fingers are up and you're moving the back of the hand toward the top of the forearm, or the back of the forearm, whatever this part of the hairy part of the forearm, right? And if you move the palm toward the inside of the forearm, right, that's just omote take ori, right? So, or at least a very basic. Those of you in law enforcement and security may know it as a gooseneck come along, or just a come along, but that's pitch, right? So again, if you level things out so the hand is in line with the forearm and you move the hand side to side, so toward the thumb, toward the little finger, right? This is called yaw, Y-A-W. Okay. So if we're on an airplane, right, pitch would make the nose go up or make the nose drop. Yaw would make the plane turn at its elevation, right? Just turn like a car on a roadway, right? So now if you turn your hand or turn your forearms, just bring your elbow up a little bit. So now the little finger is up, right? And you move the little finger toward the ulna, the one forearm bone, right? The points at the elbow. If you press in that direction, generally speaking, that's called hongyaku, right? Hongyaku, right? So you press it in that direction, but you feel the pain on the thumb side of the joint, right? And then we get it, right? We can twist things, right? So we can twist the hand in place on the wrist. Not really twisting on the wrist, you're twisting the wrist lower end of the forearm, right? Juxtapositioning the radial bone in the ulna, right? This way, right? That's called rotation, right? It's how we open and close a lot of Western style doorknobs, those kind of things, right? So, and that's people know that as, ura gyaku, omote gyaku, that kind of thing. The gyakute, omote ura hon, they're all variations of takeori, right? That wrist shearing kind of thing. So they can be all done individually, right? But if you can do 2 or 3 lines of, if you can lock things in 2 or 3 directions at the same time, you get not only more control, but it's not momentary. You make it more difficult for him to get out. The brain is getting uh, contradictory information, right? These proprioceptors and things like that in the body, and things that are gathering and sending information. It's conflicting information. So the brain has a harder time processing it. Okay. So for instance, if we were to do omote gyaku, or let's do ura gyaku, right? So if instead of just flipping the hand around on the rotation, right? So if somebody just does this, you can literally squat and walk under your own arm and turn around, because as long as you can move your elbow and your shoulder joint, you can turn around. Really freaks people out because they don't understand how it's working, right? Because you shouldn't be able to move into your own arm in that direction, and not break yourself. But again, it's understanding the whole unit, right? In the Yokoryu, it's one of the happo called shuho, shuho, right? Hand methods, hand ways, which implies the entire unit, right? But if instead of just flipping it around, if as we take a hold of it, right, and we begin to move, if I press in toward the wrist, right, and you have to do this on your own to figure this out, but if I apply a hongyaku first, hon means main or principal in this context, right? So what I came to understand with these gyakute, if I really start to dive in and understand the names that they're given and why they're doing things, hone or main, I've come to see this particular lock as the thing that's in everything. Okay, it's a core piece, right? It's a crux, it's a kodomo, right? So if I apply pressure in and get a hongyaku first, and then roll this around, see the elbow doesn't come up as easily, right? I'm in here pressing this thing, and then I can isolate that and keep it from rolling over. Now he has to do it from his shoulder, which throws the rest of his body off, right? Um, and then we can add, right? Get to here, and then as I flip it over, I fold the hand toward the forearm, and now I have a hongyaku and an uragyaku and a takiori all on at the same time, right? And so it becomes harder and harder for the brain and the body to work out the problem for him to be able to escape. Okay. Where I'm going with this is this not accepting things at face value. Okay. But while I'm on a technique, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, right, is that not only do people just in general kind of pick beliefs, preferences, right? They develop habits, favorite things or whatever, and they gravitate toward those things. And that becomes, the more they do it, this is a big thing in Mikyo. The more we do the same things the same way, our sense of reality, our sense of the way things are and the way things work get crystallized. And we have a harder and harder time adapting, which is a huge thing in Ninjutsu. Adaptability is like the crux of everything. It is the key to endurance. Flexibility is the key to longevity, right? So, but students and martial artists do this as well, right? There's over reliance on favorite moves or favorite weapons or rigid mindsets, like the official way to do things, right? Style, orientation, that kind of thing, right? They will boast about rank, lineage, um, accomplishments. I think a couple of episodes ago I mentioned this one guy that I don't even know if he's still in the Bujinkan. This was years ago. In a 45-minute conversation with him, he told me over and over again, over a dozen times, that he had earned his sixth dan in less than 6 years. Right. So just this again and again kind of thing, right? But very often this is done to hide secret fears of inadequacy. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to pull from this. And again, I'm pulling from Ninpo, Wisdom for Life, by Hasumi Sensei. This particular edition was redone by Joe Marantonio. Now, this is way back from 1998. So for some folks, this might be like old ideas, but old ideas sometimes, well, more often than not, are old because they survive the test of time. Anyway, there is a section in here. Chapter 3 is titled Life of Perseverance. Okay. And then he just has these small sections, right? People who cannot bear life do not live, endure using kuji, make yourself invisible, those kind of things, right? There is a subsection in this particular chapter called Get Rid of Your Inferiority Complex. Right? And so I'm just going to read from this. It's very, very short. Probably not going to read the whole thing. Maybe. We'll see. No, I probably won't. I'll probably just paraphrase it here because there's some things that they don't kind of relate to what we're talking about at the moment. Okay. But it's very short. Like, it's just starts here and it ends here. It's not very long. Okay. But don't confuse a couple of only having a couple of paragraphs with stuff that isn't going to take a while to get your head wrapped around. I remember Hatsumi Sensei showing lessons before that, just a physical lesson, like shooting strike with a kusari fundo. So we got this thing balled up in our hand, doing the shooting strike, and do it at the air, and then we do it at targets. Right? These clay roof tiles that you see in Japanese buildings that give it that arc look, right? In these things, and we're getting these little ding marks and whatnot, and then Soke goes pow and just shatters this thing. Okay, dink, dink. Now a 2-inch, basically fishing sinker, right, hitting you in the skull. It's going to do some serious damage. It's going to take somebody out of the fight. Okay, but he didn't show that. What he showed was this thing hits and just shatters this tile. And so we do it, and he just starts chuckling. And then he says, I give you 6 months of consistent practice to get that right. Because, he'd do it, or he'd do anything. Going into Ichimonji, doing something. Manaka Sensei would do the same thing. Sanshin, Chido Waza, whatever. And do this thing, and he'd go, okay, I'll give you 4 to 6 months to get that right. That was the constant term or the constant phrase. Most of us look at each other like, 4 to 6 months. I got it. And then we'd do something else where I remember the first time, like I had the Sanchi no Kata, right? And these waza, Chi no Kata, Sui no Kata, you guys know these. And doing this stuff with Manaka Sensei as a warm-up, first day at a seminar. A lot of my students can relate to this now, right? And so we would do 5 on one side, start out and Shoshi no Kamae, each do it, right? We did the same thing at Sumei Sensei's dojo, all these things, right? And then we would do, so that was katate, right? So left side would always stay forward. We'd do 5 repetitions. Then we go right side forward, 5 repetitions. And then we would do ryote, right? Both sides. And that's where mine got blown, because we would do it and he's already off on the next one. He'd go each, ni, san, and we're supposed to be doing these things. Yeah, I'm getting farther and farther and farther behind because I felt pretty cocky learning it one side. Well, I know to do this. Step 1, step 2. It's a basic. Yeah, it's a basic. It doesn't mean it's a beginner technique. It's a basic as in a brick in a wall forming this building. And so, and as a primary, it's probably more important than a brick. It's a weight-bearing wall or load-bearing wall, right? You can move other ones around, but if you move this one, shit's going to fall down, right? And so it wasn't exposed until later where 4 to 6 months. Okay, I got this one. I got it. Okay, great. Got that one. Next. All right. And then the next level of skill proficiency is thrown at us, and we're just fumbling around, and they're just smiling. Okay, perhaps another 4 to 6 months. Okay. So anyway, let me just read from here. So Hatsumi Sensei writes, every human being has secrets. This is called the subconscious mind from a psychological perspective. This comes out as a pattern of individual action. Freud considered such behavior to be rooted in sexuality. I tend to call it as the boy, so the man. For example, if the child grows up starving in poverty, the experience remains in his mind throughout his life, just like a burn scar stays on the skin for a lifetime. It is said that only after you have fully eaten are you starved for sex. Then, when you've passed your sexual prime, you'll become very materialistic and desire notoriety. I'm not past my prime yet. Anyway, let's see. By the way, when you meet someone who has a bigger secret than yours, sometimes you feel small and you withdraw. But other times it ignites your enthusiasm to strive. When you hear the words inferiority complex, you tend to think of it as a sloppy, weak sentiment that losers possess. However, I think this is a lopsided view and a bit prejudiced. Actually, the inferiority complex can be a source for indispensable energy and personal motivation to build a castle around yourself so you can withstand attack. If you look at the inferiority complex this way, ancient Budo was a battle between individual secrets. In the Bushi society, one was not supposed to show one's emotions. Therefore, Kuden, oral teachings, Hiken, secret scrolls, and Hiden, secret teachings, were very attractive things for practitioners of the martial arts. However, if you openly showed your desire for these, you would be killed instantly by an attack. Even now in modern society, the person who clearly wants to make a mark in society will not make it. Sometimes we meet people who nonchalantly brag about their path to the top. That kind of person has already neutralized or lost their secret perspective. To live with one's hidden spirit means to keep striving for life itself, and this can be called hope. The source of making a mark in society is in the hidden spirit, the heart. Therefore, the most important first step is to live confidently with your own hidden heart. By doing so, you can get rid of the inferiority complex, quote, the feeling of being a loser. People often ask me, what's my favorite technique? I always answer that I do not have one. This is because for a practitioner of the martial arts, having a favorite waza, having a favorite technique tends to be fatal. It is the same as if a baseball player or boxer having his favorite technique studied by a rival finds himself facing that rival, facing certain defeat. Therefore, the loser would be the winner and the winner would be a loser. I think it's great to hear my students say that they cannot read my mind. I would like to say that any player who brags about his favorite technique should be considered a novice martial artist. Right? So if we think about that, right, we'll start with the martial arts part there, right? Having favorite techniques, having favorite things, right? You become a one-hit wonder. And while this can work a lot, right? Everybody probably knows about Chuck Norris's history, right? This is going to be blasphemy, right? Because of all the Chuck Norris jokes, right? But Chuck Norris, when he entered the competition scene, James, you know about this, right? When he entered the competitive scene, like he won all of his matches, right? He only ever lost one, and he retired right after that, and just went into movies. You know about that, right?
I vaguely remember it.
Okay. So in the early days of sport karate competitions, almost everybody was a Japanese stylist. So things were pretty similar. Well, he comes on the scene. He's a Korean stylist. Okay. Things are different. The approach is different. The style is different. This is why Taekwondo very quickly became Taekwondo, Tang Soo Do. The Korean styles became like they had their time in the sun, so to speak. Right. So he comes along and is throwing kicks and very different from what the Japanese stylists were used to. So he was just winning, right, match after match, until he went up against another Korean stylist, and he lost pretty quickly. And of course, he retired after that. But so the style or the system or the this is my way of doing things kind of thing, right? And we always do it the same way. Um, Works as long as we're going up against people who that works on. But as soon as we go up against somebody who has either a studied the same thing, that's their approach too, right? Things get more difficult. Two, um, they have uh, they have either experienced it or studied it enough to understand it and recognize it and have developed defenses against it, right? Our job gets harder. Or three, the worst, and Sun Tzu talks about this in The Art of War, they've studied your tactics. They've studied you. Right? And based on that, either developed ways of handling it, or in the case, see, I'm a self-protection person, and I don't confuse that with fighting, right? Yes, you are fighting for your life, but it's not the same thing. Um, if a assailant knows what your security system is, what your tactics are, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and whatnot, right? You don't end up in you don't end up in a position where you can even throw your stuff, because a smart strategist, so a tactician's already on the battlefield and they're maneuvering things based on the fight as it's happening, right? So that's the bobbing and weaving as the punches are coming in and those kind of things, right? But a strategist sets things up from the very beginning to prevent you from being able to even get started, right? They eliminate uh, supply lines, they diminish, you know, energy, morale, all kinds of things, right? Before things even get started, right? Uh, and so that becomes very problematic. How much more problematic does this become when we're posting shit on social media or whenever the topic of martial arts or whatever comes up? We're telling everybody what our favorite techniques are, what our favorite weapons are, what our favorite moves are. Or people see, here's where people don't think that they're doing it. But again, this is a huge insecurity kind of things. When people post under other people's videos, that shit wouldn't work. It's not going to work on me, right? Whatever, right? What they're in an attempt to present themselves as being a better fighter, more skilled, they're kick your ass, they know more than you do, and all that. In an attempt to present that, the astute strategist is hearing, I can't defend against that. I don't know what it looks like as it starts to manifest. I think it's bullshit. So even if he was putting it on me, right, I think I can muscle out of it, but I don't know that muscling out of it is what actually makes my shoulder come apart, not what he's doing. Interesting, right? So we have to be careful, right? The strategist, right, doesn't say the things they don't say is way more than the things they do. Right? We have to come to understand truths like not everybody wants to see you succeed, right? Even some people close to you, because if you succeed, like everybody's all for you while you're trying to succeed. Trust me, the moment you succeed or attain some level of success, even if they're not showing outwards as resentment or whatever, there's little things that happen like, oh, Oh, look who's the big man now, who can afford a new car, and look who's the just everything changes, right? Boss man and all kinds of things, right? It shifts, right? Culturally, we're always going after the successful, right? They don't need that much money. They had to have lied, cheated, stolen. Uh, uh, they're corrupt. That's how they made it, or whatever. And what's really funny is the moment, or the moment that the change happens. Right before that, it was like, yeah, man, you go. Right, I'm rooting for you. Whatever. Right, but man, once it happens, shit, it's a fan. Right? You can see this happen all the time. I considered today. I toyed around, and I who knows? Maybe I'll still post it at some point. But all the shit that's going on, from a ninja's perspective, right? From somebody, I'm a moderate, politically speaking, right? I listen to both sides go at it, and I'd like to just stand on that line and go, you're both right and wrong, just not at the same time. If you shut up and listen to each other, you might learn something. But what's interesting to see is that for some people, for a great many people, justice is only it's only fair when it works out for me. Speaking from each individual's ego, right? Otherwise, we'll ignore those rules over there. We'll ignore that we said something before because our team, right, was doing this thing, but when the other team's doing this thing, well, then it's something else, right? And if we don't catch ourselves with those, I guess where I'm going with that is that people don't realize how easily manipulated they are. And I know it's everybody else that's manipulated. I get it. Right? But again, for instance, right, we're here in doing this ninjutsu martial arts kind of thing. I know how turned on the people who gravitate toward this stuff are to kanji, to Japanese terminology, to me saying Hatsumi Sensei said, or Takamatsu Sensei said. Okay? I hate that phrase. Okay? Because if I have to say it, one, there's either an insecurity about what I think I know, or I don't know much, so I'm just parroting things back, or I'm borrowing clout. Okay? I've always hated that. So if you go back and if you have the inclination to read what do I have, James? About 600 articles circulating on the internet, give or take.
Right.
Yeah. So I was busy. Anyway, even in my classes, I use that stuff very much. Okay? But you see me doing it. Why do I do it? It's not for me. It's manipulation. Because some people, to take me seriously, need to hear that phrase. Otherwise, they won't listen. Even though they want the lesson, they won't listen. And so people will gravitate to any book that has the word ninja on it. They'll break their freaking neck walking down the street. They see the nim symbol, right? I know some people that had to buy ninja motorcycles or ninja blenders or whatever because it had the fucking word ninja on it, right? And they're in ninjutsu, right? Be careful. Not every book that has the word ninja on it. We all know this, right? There's the Ishida Kim books and all that kind of shit that's out there, right? As a matter of fact, I have one of those on my shelf. I think it's at the dojo. Art of the Ninja by Ishida Kim. It's not up there because I read Ishida Kim stuff. I read it, right? I read several of the other books. that I borrowed from libraries. It was research. Okay. The reason that the Ishida Kim book is on my shelf, as well as another one by the hell, some Chinese guy. I don't know. Reason why those two are up there is to remind me of the charlatans that are out there. Okay. But there's plenty of things that are out there that have the same lessons, no Japanese terminology, no reference of ninja, anything like that, and are absolutely indispensable in certain areas of our training. Okay. Gray's Anatomy. There's a whole bunch of things that are out there. The Gentle Art of Verbal Self-Defense in all kinds of versions, because they're all, right, if you ascribe to the Godai uh, uh, structure, just for being able to catalog and categorize things, right? Um, they're actually written out that way, but they're not called Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, and Void. But if you know what you're looking at, here's 5 different options or 4 different options for every one of these situations that pop up, and how to uncover it, or the strategy for. But again, it's all verbal, right? The book Influence by Robert Cialdini, right? That explains the 7 hardwired influencers or triggers that we have in our minds because we're social creatures, and how they're manipulated on a regular basis by advertisers, by marketing people, by salespeople, those kind of things, right? And how to negate them, right? Why they work, how they're triggered, and how you can reframe your head to make sure that you're not manipulated. Okay? It's a bunch of stuff that's out there. So, anyway, James, any questions or comments pop up before I move on to the next piece here?
Let's see. There's something here from Terrence. I'm grateful that you decided to speak on transforming weakness into strength. It could have been the title to the email I was going to send you over the weekend. Question was on the Mikyo side. If misdirected desire is the cause of suffering, and desire/passion is my greatest source of strength, so much so it can be a struggle to channel it productively, how can I achieve that no limits state using desire as a skillful means?
Okay, so we have to start before that. Well, you don't start before that. You have to take those same you take the same lessons, right? So what is the root of things? Okay. We can't just say that Trishna, right, misdirected desire, is the root of these things, because there's 3 poisons, right? There's passion, there's ignorance, passion, hatred, anger, hatred, right? Um, and the passion that he's talking about is actually desire/passion, because they're not easily fit into things. Ignorance is not knowing any better, right? I don't know there's other options that are available. I don't know. I don't know any better than this thing. I'm operating based on guesswork. I'm operating based on somebody told me because somebody told them because somebody told, right? Bad case of telephone, whatever, right? Or I just want something, but I don't know how it works. Those kind of things. And then when that doesn't work out, then I get angry, or I hate other people who have it, or I resent. I mean, these words are just they're pointers because language falls short, right? So there's lots of other words that can be used, like anger, hatred, resentment, dissatisfaction, confusion, all kinds of stuff, right? So I try to do this thing, it doesn't work out for me, so I end up in this thing, and because of ignorance, and sustaining the ignorance, right? I don't try to learn any better, right? Then I go into this passion desire cycle more, and when that doesn't work out, I end up in anger, hatred. So there are these 3 poisons, right? But so you can't just isolate one, because in the iconography, they're all biting on each other's tails, which means they all are born of the other ones and lead to the other ones. Okay. So I get it. I get the passion thing, because you're a fiery kind of guy, right? But Trishna, misdirected desire, what does that mean? Okay. So there's a really good book, and I highly recommend this for you because you're in my Mikyo pipeline, I guess, right? I mean, you've done the exoteric things, you've done one or two esoteric-ish kind of things. There is a book called What the Buddha Taught. It's not right in front of me, or I'd give you the author. I'll send that out later. But it is strictly Theravada. It is strictly Hinayana, the base level stuff. So there's entire sections, right? So you know, what causes pain? Well, there's different types of pain. What causes dissatisfaction, right? Some of the things that cause dissatisfaction are being forced to be around people you don't want to be around, sustained exposure to things that you want to get away from or don't want to have to put up with, the constant struggle to get something that you don't have, and it always seems like it's out of reach. There's this long list, right? So you're going to have to. There's a lot more work than just like, okay, I'm here and I want this. So how do I? That's the same thing. That's not looking at the path. That's the question still born of the same material and properties. Okay, what is ultimately at the root of all of these things that are on all of these lists? Okay, wanting things to be a way that they can't be, and wanting to not have to endure things that are unpleasant. Okay. So I want all the good stuff. I want to avoid all the bad stuff. I want it to be as easy as possible. Right. And but they don't even say it possible. Right. They just want it to be easy. If I don't have to work for it, it can just be given to me. That'd be fucking fantastic. Right. Those kind of things. All of these things. Right. Human beings will always, not just kids, will always gravitate toward that which is pleasant and avoid that which is unpleasant. Right. And that in of itself is at the heart of Trishna, right? Misdirected desire. I want things to be a way they can't be, or at least not forever, or maybe not even just now until other things happen. And I don't want to have to do things that I don't want to have to do. It's not fucking difficult. It sounds pretty babyish, except that that's at the root of everything. Right? When we can recognize those, when we can catch ourselves, and we can start making changes and see, people think that enlightenment is a destination. No, enlightenment is a process, right? Mindful, thoughtful. We start by minding our own mind, right? But there's lots of other things that we went into in those programs. What he's referencing, and a lot of the stuff that's behind Terrence's question is coming out of the Ninja Mind program or the first 7 steps on the path of a Buddha, which just means awakened one, one who's awake, that kind of thing, not some kind of, spiritual deity replacement for Christ or, whatever. What else? The 37 fundamentals leading to enlightenment, those kind of things, right? So, remember we went through the 6 realms of existence. Okay, that's just an ancient form of personality typing. Okay, so until we know where we are, till you can find yourself on the mandala, you're not moving from there. Everybody wants to get to the destination, but they don't want to look at where they are, and you can't get there from not here, as my teacher used to say. So this isn't the format for that, but hopefully, I don't know, maybe adjust the question a little bit. Okay. And so you do have this heavy drive, right? You have a very intense drive, right? To get where you want to go. Me too. Okay. So here's the question. What are you running from? What will that fix? What will that make you have to not worry about? Now, the point of this episode is not making that bad. Okay. When you know, like, I'm running away from poverty, but it's not about, like, I don't want to be one of those people. I know what that feels like. Okay. But here's that phrase from Hatsumi Sensei's thing. I'm going to say this one more. This bears repeating. Okay. It's about the lopsided view, right? Being prejudiced, right? Actually, the inferiority complex can be a source for indispensable energy and personal motivation to build a castle around yourself so you can withstand attack. A lot of people run away from poverty. Most people run away from poverty because they don't ever want to be that again. Okay. Me either. But you know what? I learned how to survive at that level, and it didn't kill me. It made me more resourceful. It made me more adaptable. It made me more creative, right? The number of recipes that I have just in my head for how to make a really good, tasty meal out of packaged ramen or boxed macaroni and cheese. Everything from tuna casserole to all kinds of things, right? That are not half bad, that keep me from just feeling like, oh, I'm eating toast again, I'm eating fried eggs again, oh, boxed macaroni and cheese again. Right? So if we can flip that, okay, because I think I mentioned this in episodes before, right? Most people gravitate toward the Kyujutsu because, like, we're tricking the bad guy, right? Tricking the bad guy, right? But how do you trick somebody? How do you juxtaposition truth and falsehood if you can't properly discern truth from falsehood? If what we believe to be truth is based on belief, not universal truth, right? Like gravity and inertia and stuff that can't be argued. Okay. I saw a really good meme, and I think I shared it. James, you'll check me on this. I'm probably going to summarize here or paraphrase it, but it said that the truth doesn't lie, right? Our perception of the truth is what lies to us. Okay. It's a huge difference. Okay? So what is it that we're making our decisions on? Okay. Anyway, so again, there's a lot more to it, but the point here is the insecurities, the inferiority complex, right? That we're not somehow not good enough or whatever, right? In Mikyo, there's an exercise where you go back through and you look at different experiences and you pull up, like the first part, you'll pull up good experiences, right? Things that taught you something, they were enjoyable, whatever. And you visualize like a white border around this thing, right? And you set them off to the side. And then you bring up negative experiences, ones that, they hurt in more ways than one, whatever, right? And then you put a black border around that movie screen for each one of those. You slide that off to the side, right? And then you bring up the good experiences again, got the white border around them, right? And what you do is you put a black border around it and you look at damage that those good experiences did, right? Okay. One damaging thing that most people don't realize happens, it's a very subconscious level, is that they spend a good deal of their time, effort, money, energy, activity, and whatnot trying to recreate best days. Oh man, it was best time of my life. Oh man, best day ever. whatever. And then what they don't realize is that everything else is disappointing, because how do you beat the best day? I was with Reverend Jikai one time, and there was I had hosted a seminar at my dojo, and it was, I think it was a break time or something like that. But we're standing off to the side, and students were coming up and uh, asking questions or whatever. And one of the students was telling the stories, like, like, so are we supposed to, like, not look for good things or whatever, just be neutral? And Sensei's like, no, 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 that's not the point. And he goes, the student says, because I can remember, man, there was this, like, this thing, and we did it and everything. And it was, oh, like, it was the best day ever. And Reverend Jikai's face just, like, changed, like he was at a funeral. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The student was like, wait, no, it was a good thing. He's, wow, life has had to have been terrible since then. What are you talking about? Like, how do you beat the best day? Can you see how a lot of disappointment in life could be created because nothing's topping the best day? Can you see, if we watch movies, especially here in the West, that have a music score behind it, right? How stale and almost feeling like life is missing something because our everyday life doesn't have a musical score to it. But we never question those things. We're busy trying to fill things in. Or here's one that might hit home for a couple of folks. They're trying to get back into the art. They've been gone for years, or they had an injury or illness. Who knows, right? And now they're not just a couple of years older; they're decades older, and their body's not the same, life's not the same, whatever, right? And they're trying to figure out how to get back into things and how to make it work. Or whenever they do things, it's just missing something. It just doesn't feel the same. Yeah, they're not fucking 20 anymore. They're not in their teens anymore. They're a different person. What's the why? Is the why, and I could lose some students over this, is the why they want the power that this has to offer so that they can do XYZ? Or is this just another way to relive something that they think they lost? Oof. Again, my favorite word. Interesting, huh? Maybe. I don't know. So, Terrence, the answer to your question is it's going to take more than just you asking a question with those few words, with that kind of vagueness, for me to give you any kind of specificity that's going to move you in any direction. So, but my suggestion is we back up and we identify the thing that, one, you now have a lot of experience with, but two, you're trying to run from. But three, it can put the reason you're doing what you're doing into better context, and it can become the fortress that when the naysayers show up, you're more clear on your why. Maybe. James, anything else?
Terrence said, for brevity's sake, I left out the aha moment that would provide more context. Perhaps this is a more appropriate email.
Yeah, I'll wait for the next chapter. If nothing else, dude, your attempt at being clear is refreshing, because most people, that's too much damn work. They want to ask the simplest question to get the most profound answer that will solve all their problems. Trishna. misdirected desire. I want the answer and I want all the benefit for it, so I don't ever have to ask the question again and I don't have to work anymore. I want it as easy as possible with as little effort on my part as possible. Um, you know, because I don't want to work hard for it. Enlightenment, like all my problems go away. Bullshit. One of the most misunderstood phrases of all time is know the truth and it shall set you free. There is nothing stated or implied in that freaking statement that once you know the truth, all pain, all suffering, all trouble goes away. What you get set free from is the ignorance that causes us to throw gasoline on the fire, make a mountain out of a molehill, all that kind of shit, right? It's just, no, what you get set free from is looking for something that is a forever thing. But do yourself a favor, don't believe me, and go through the process. So everybody's looking for a teacher to give them the answer so they don't have to go figuring out the answer for themselves. Therein lies a problem. Anyway, anything else? We good?
And Trinity said your ramen is nostalgia in a bowl. It's okay that we didn't always have a lot. We had you, and that's all we really remember.
Do you remember the poor man's spaghetti? I bet she does. And it's not about not having a lot, right? I mean, mom was fairly comfortable, right? Once she and I split and whatnot, but dad has always run his own business. So up times, down times, but you guys always had good times, right? So anyway, it's all good. So let's keep moving. All right. So what's the secret weapon here? What's the answer? Well, what we're looking at here is transforming inferiority into power. I just spent quite a while here discussing this with Terrence. Thanks, Terrence. That's awesome. That was perfect time. Okay. So here's some things I picked up from Hatsumi Sensei. I picked up through him, right? From Takamatsu Sensei through Hatsumi Sensei's explaining of things and whatnot. But also other warriors over time, and not just Japanese, not just Chinese, not just Sun Tzu, not just, because this warrior ethos is pretty freaking universal, right? But it's this, again, transforming inferiority into power. Okay. So what we need to understand, like the flaunting of things. I remember one of the things that surprised me the most about Hatsumi Sensei as a grandmaster, coming from a lot of other martial arts. I mean, I'm talking like coming from martial arts where I remember watching a student get chastised. We were at this event, watching a student get chastised because like we had just had like major training, right? We're all like hot and sweaty and geese are hanging, all kinds of stuff, right? And a phone call came in and needed to get this one teacher. And so he runs over into this group, and this grandmaster of this big freaking organization happened to be there. They were teaching, and a bunch of other stuff was going on, high-ranking people and all that, right? And the student runs over, and has this message, right? And just yelled at immediately, right? Snap to, whatever, right? Before he was allowed to talk, right? Fix your uniform. How dare you present a bare chest to the in front of the grandmaster and all, like that kind of shit, right? And so, your belt wasn't tied correctly. If it wasn't tied by the official way to tie the belt, right? Like I give my students a freaking shortcut because the knot looks exactly the same. But anyway, and then I get involved in this martial art. And the first time I meet Hatsumi Sensei, like he's telling jokes and shit, right? He's acting like everybody else. Because, I had read the books, Hatsumi Sensei, and read other instructors' writings about and meeting and whatnot. And then I meet the guy, right? I remember the very first time it's at the seminar, and I'm walking past where it's a break time between a couple of, maybe it was right after training had taken place, and walking by with this friend. As a matter of fact, the friend his name was Robert. He was from Hawaii, and he would fly in, and we would all go and share expenses and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, he had this camera, right? I mean, we knew Hatsumi Sensei was coming in and was teaching and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, so he had this camera, he was hoping he could sneak a picture and whatnot. And walking by, and I'm just kind of glancing out of the corner of my eye, breaking my eyeballs, trying to like not look like I'm like gawking, right? Starstruck like everybody else. And Hatsumi Sensei looks over and he goes, oh, calls us over and stuff. He says, quick, wraps his arm around me, right? And goes, quick, take a picture of me and my new friend. And like, I have the picture, right? He's smiling, looking like him. He's got his arm wrapped around me. I've told stories about this before, where when I put my arm around him, like I could feel him, his arms around me and all that kind of stuff. But I put my arm around him and I felt like I like fell inside kind of thing. It was the weirdest thing. So like there's soft and relaxed. And then there's like, I fell into a vacuum, but there he is. He's like beaming and smiling and all that. And there's me. I got this smile on my face and I had this look like, like this was a cool moment, but it was a weird moment. And it was an unexpected moment. There's a whole bunch of shit going on. But I was totally taken aback by this grandmaster kind of thing, right? And just all the teachers, not all, all my teachers in this art, all the early ones, all were like cut out of the same mold, right? Very interesting. So, but what I learned through a lot of these, a lot of these lessons that kind of come from this is that true warriors don't flaunt their strengths, right? They quietly forge them, right? And this is not just warriors within the martial arts, right? Mentors that I hold in esteem in the entrepreneurial world, in the academic world and whatnot. They are very guarded about who they tell what about projects that they're working on. Okay? If they do talk about it, it's more of a hint at, but less on the details. Or they'll be very clear about, well, it's just not in a position, it's not something that, has come together well, and don't have a lot of details yet. And it's just very vague about it, right? Because the more details we give, the more information we provide to those who either want to stop us, will want to tear it down, or will want to wreck the ship before it even sets sail. And then there's those who will jump to things to copy it, to steal it before it even gets off the ground. One of the things I learned when I became a consultant was there are companies out there who will, one did it to me, who will jump on a training or go to a training that includes a certification or whatever, right? And because they already have a much better established infrastructure or whatever, right? What they'll do is they'll go and get the certification or get the training from that individual, and then they'll go and put their own little spin on it and rebrand it and get to clients before the other person can. Okay. But again, just in the martial arts and self-defense world, the more we talk about how we would defend against certain things, what our favorite techniques are, all those kind of things, right? We never know who the hell is listening, right? But there's also a deeper level to this, right? And for folks that, went through trauma, went through, the beat down, all that kind of stuff, right? And they've got this inferiority complex for whatever reason, right? Um, we're all easy to kill. This is not a martial artist going, "Well, you're all easy to kill." Me too. We're all easy to kill. We're training. Well, some of us are training to become more difficult to kill because I can't do good in the world if I'm not in the world. Right? So ultimately, there's this thing within, Bushido, right? The warrior accepts death. Okay? Well, on the face of it, the warrior accepts death because they're a freaking warrior and their their job or responsibility, self-imposed or otherwise, is to step in to do the hard shit that other people won't. Right? As Dr. Matsu said, um, you know, who the hell in their right mind want to be a warrior? You're out at 4 a.m., still dark, it's cold, you're in dew soaked grass in chafing armor while everybody else is still spooning with his honey fast asleep. But somebody's got to do it. Right? So we recognize, right? In whatever shape that takes, law enforcement, firefighters, whatever, right? But that's the omote side. The other side is the warrior who has accepted death is harder to kill because they're going to go farther and they're going to do more and they're going to be willing to take on more risk than the paper warriors. Okay. We've talked about this before. Beware the guy who was assigned a zero value sum to their life. The guy that's come up on the street, he's been in all kinds of crime and shit like that. He knows he could die at any day and he doesn't give a flying fuck. You're not intimidating that guy. If you don't kill him, he will keep coming. There are real terminators in the world. Right? The warrior who has accepted death is harder to kill. Right? And those who have gone through hardship and not died should look at that truth. Those who have survived at lower levels, those who have been poor, those who have been broken, those who have been heartbroken, those kind of things, right? They've been there. They should be able to recognize the signs. One of the things I said when I proposed to my wife 17 years ago now, so I guess it was before that. We've been married 17 years. So 17, almost 18. Okay. Everybody was like, dude, number 4. Okay. Yeah, I understand the perspective you're coming at. Okay. But everybody else had the same opportunity to be number 1. I've always been looking for number 1. That was one of the first things I said. Always been looking forward to looking for number 1. Okay. Man. Well, I guess now you know what you're looking for. I said, I am because I'm more clear on me. But what I can tell you is I know what I'm not looking for. That's a different perspective. Okay. The first thing I wasn't looking for was for all of the things that are set up front, right? About how they're not going to be like that other person. Didn't sway me at all. Okay. But there was lots of experience through all those heartbreaks. Okay. that told me I needed somebody who was going to be a partner in this venture, that wasn't going to throw me under the bus or run off, leaving me to have to fix things whenever they're going to be around. Anybody can be around when it's nice and everything's good, right? Who has your back when shit's bad? It's not just for friends. It should be for a life partner more than anybody else, right? And so some of you guys know this story. That's, where I told what was then girlfriend, right? She even started making comments in a certain direction. No, I'm not there yet. Okay? And I won't be until I see you in two conditions: angry and scared. And those conditions have to be wrapped around things that is an us thing, not just a you thing. And if it is a you thing, it has to be with where other people are involved. And she was confused. She thought I meant that I would be making her angry and scaring her. No. I need to see you in those two conditions, because in those two conditions, the facade drops. You are you, and your default mechanism for handling problems, pain, discomfort, trouble, that's what comes out. And only then will I be able to see how you operate under pressure when other people are involved. Then I can make certain clear decisions moving forward. Not just because, I feel so great when I'm around you. I feel great around lots of people. Some people are like vacuum cleaners. The suction is on. It's a vacuum. So either way, right? But there's something else to this as well, right? The martial artist, the warrior who accepts fear becomes fearless. Remember those old fucking bumper stickers, right? Fearless. Sure enough, another one came out. Fear this. Fucking stupid. Okay? Fearless. See, this whole thing becomes fearless. That's in appearance. Because people who want to be fearless, they're afraid of being afraid. That's the crux. The biggest fear is not the fear of death, the fear of speaking, public speaking, none of that shit. The biggest fear for human beings is being afraid of being afraid. Okay? Fear, I have found, is either a great immobilizer, paralyzer, right? Or a great motivator. And there's that thing. Even being afraid of going back to poverty. Whatever the drive is. Right? But if I can accept it, right? Fear. There's a phrase that comes out of Mikyo that was presented. The first time I saw it was in Hatsumi Sensei's Ninjutsu History and Tradition, right? And it was framed, right? This saying for the ninja, Banpen Fukyo, sometimes written out as Banpen Fugyo, right? It was translated in that book as no surprises for the ninja, but that's not what it means literally. It just means no surprises. Okay. And a lot of people misunderstood that. I know I did in the beginning, right? That ninja can't be surprised. That's not what it means. It means that you're not immobilized or caught up when you're surprised. Because if you recognize if you learn the way the brain works and the mind works, and how, if we're really focused on something, somebody can sneak up on us and scare the shit out of you, right? It's not that you're going to be surprised. Your system was shaken. You had to reorient yourself to this thing. It's how quickly it can happen, or how quickly you can make the shift. And you're not caught up by the surprise. Because if you're caught up by it and you're focusing on, poke me in the, well, then you're not paying attention to the rest of the shit that they're doing, right? Shoshi Malmstrom used to walk around the dojo, he'd be training and stuff, and he'd walk up and pop you in the freaking rib, and or wherever, right? Just a little thumb drive, hit you with something, and if you looked, he'd go Banpen Fukyo and walk off, right? And if I remember the first time I was startled by it, and he said it, and I went, no surprises. He goes, yeah, if I were your partner, I'd have punched you 4 times already because you're paying attention to me and not to him. Okay? What am I supposed to be paying attention to? Him. Did that hurt you? Did that require a whatever? Okay. Could you have repositioned yourself from that to bring me into your peripheral vision while still maintaining contact with him? Why are you still doing nose to nose, toe to toe when somebody poked you in the back instead of repositioning so that you could see what happened, right? Not worry about processing it because he's throwing shit at you. I could have, but I didn't. But I learned to, because eventually it just became shit that happened. And sometimes it wasn't a poke with that. Sometimes it was a rubber star that came flying across the room and hit you in the face. But that wasn't the most important thing because I'm not dead. And even if I am bleeding, this guy's trying to stab me or whatever he's trying to do. It was his way of teaching us to fucking focus on what was most important in the moment. Okay. Was I surprised? Yeah. Okay. But what's most important right now? Getting caught up in the drama or creating drama because of the surprise, or not getting punched in the throat by this guy. Okay. And then that changes how somebody can psych you out and those kind of things, right? He can throw all kinds of psych outs all he wants. But if I know that I'm controlling the distance and he can't touch me, he can't reach me, why the hell am I flinching? Well, isn't that what you do when... No, it's what somebody does who's fucking in range and keeps getting popped by a jab. They should be flinching. Okay. So, okay. But are you going to be, is the adrenal response going to kick in? Is it going to do? Yeah. But there's so many people training today with this fucking soft training that they won't let themselves. Everything's nice. It's right. Beautiful, isn't it? Okay. Because they're fucking afraid of being afraid. Not much of a warrior. Okay. The courageous, the brave are that not because of the absence of fear. They're able to act regardless of the fear. Somebody's got to do it. Okay. Some of us run toward the danger. Most do not. Okay. And it's easy to talk about it. But that boastfulness and all that kind of shit, right? The person who sees shit happen and immediately self-reflects, like, I don't know, guess we'll see, right? Not the same kind of person. It's like, oh, you know me, man, I got your back. I'll be in there. Right? Had somebody once, was a parent of a student, just story after story after story, right? Tough guy. My wife and I were at this big event. They were there as well. Not my students, but the parents. And trouble started to brew across the room. And I had shifted. And things were really, as soon as they got to touch and go, I looked over at him and I said, when I get up, I'm going to move straight this way. I'm going to need you to cut across the wall and that side to flank on the other side. And he goes, oh no, I'm waiting to see what you're going to do. And what I said was, oh no, I've been listening to your bullshit for months. You either have my back or you have a problem after this is done. And the look on his face is unforgettable because he was cornered. He had to back up all of his bullshit. And in that moment where he had to like put up or shut up, anyway, so what we're really looking at here is Kyuts Tenkan, this juxtaposition, truth and falsehood. The secret weapon here, the transformation, the transmuting tool, is this, right? It's applied to ourselves, not just the enemy. Okay. So what we're really doing here, and this is what I alluded to with Terrence, is using self-knowledge to trick the parts of yourself that would otherwise sabotage you. The things we were taught to see as weaknesses, we reframed them so that they're strengths. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to, I mean, I grew up that way. So I'm not going to die. I will figure this out. And I'm going to be able to do it way better now. Okay. I'm not afraid of losing everything that I own because I have the skill sets to build it back again. Right. If I lose it, it's not a forever thing. Nothing is a forever thing. There's the comfort. Right. That's the walls of my fortress. Right? Everybody's afraid to lose things because they're afraid of going back. But it's really the belief that things are permanent. That's the problem. That's where the fear comes from. But I've developed the skill sets to build it back all over again. Right? I've told everybody, like, I want to retire to the Caribbean. That's not a dream. Okay? That will happen. And if it's not there, who knows? It could be Key West, it could be in Texas or whatever. Just tired of fucking cold because it hurts. Right? But I'd love the Caribbean. And I love the Caribbean. Just anyway. So because my skill sets and what I do, whether it's this or having a dojo or doing seminars or doing the consulting things. I'm about to add another thing, and this is where the vagueness comes in, right? It's focused on warrior-based leadership, right? Up to this point, my corporate stuff has been wrapped around workplace violence mitigation and response and things like that. But you know what? People see that kind of thing as like insurance, and it might be do I want to do it? Like most people don't think about danger until they're neck deep in it and about to get stabbed in the ass. Okay. But consulting that can make them a better leader, that can increase the their productivity and their ability to produce results, increase or grow the company, whatever. Oh, that's just so. But it's also a cool backdoor into them getting to know me and recognizing that the other stuff is more valuable than it is, or than they originally assumed, because now they're a different type of leader. And it's not the same fluff. It's based on warrior principles. It's the same stuff I'm doing. It just, guess what? It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have a lot of the kanji. It wouldn't have a lot of the Japanese terminology, although there are some terms in there because of the tribe I'm going to be building. But it's just different, right? And the more of these things that I put in place, like because I have a multi-pronged approach, not everything has to work well all the time. Okay. Either way, right? So, but the point here is using self-knowledge, right? What is driving or what's creating the sabotage, right? I've had conversations with people that tell me that I just don't understand. They don't have enough money, they don't have enough time, and they really get upset when I ask them, well, why do you keep applying for the same jobs that offer the same amount of money? We don't understand. I don't understand why, because I don't know you very well. You know you better than me, right? So what stops you from applying for the job the next level up, or by looking for things that, well, I know part of it, right? It's a comfort zone thing, right? But there's got to be something in there where there's an acceptance that that's my lot in life. That's the easier job to get. That's something I know. Uh, whatever, right? Amongst all the bullshit that gets told and whatever, right? I don't have a certification. Well, how do you get one? What? There's companies that will freaking they need people and they will like hire you and pay for you to get your certification. James, tell me I'm wrong. Maybe he's not going to tell me I'm wrong. James knows he's worked for a couple of companies that freaking pay for your certifications and stuff. So it just, what is doing the stopping? What is the root cause of? Okay? This is a big thing in Mikyo, right? It's being a doctor. And I don't mean going to medical school and all that, but being like a doctor. If you can diagnose the problem based on the symptoms, then you can apply the right medicine. Right? So we'll just wrap this up with this is based on Hatsumi Sensei's like the spirit behind a lot of these lessons, right? But phrased the way I tend to think about it, right? The true warrior hides not from others, but from himself the temptation to fear. People almost lead with that, right? I don't know how many of you have gone through our life purpose discovery process, which is synthesized from like years of work that I've done into 5 exercises. And it's based on that. And I'm sure a lot of you have encountered exercises like this. Like if you could wave a magic wand and create your perfect life, right? What would right? And say a lot of these exercises start with what would be a part of it. But my exercise 1 is what would not be a part of it. Okay. And people are often confused by that. Like, why would you start with a negative? Okay. Well, the answer to that is that most people find it easier to think about the negative. It's like cultural, right? Complaining about shit. They find it easier to think in the negative than they do in the positive. So when they get to exercise 2, wave a magic wand, what would absolutely be a part of that perfect life? And they run into a wall because they can't think of more than a couple of things. I tell them to go back to exercise number 1 and start writing down the opposite of everything that they wrote that would not be a part of that life. Okay? Because if this is the negative, then you must want the opposite of that thing. But the reason I put that in as exercise 1 is because it's just plain and simple. The average human being finds it easier to think in the negative because whether they've been taught this way or just settled into it because of cultural influences or whatever, just has conditioned themselves to think in the negative way more often. They get there more easily. That's the habit, right? They don't like their job, they don't like their situation, whatever it is. They could be plopped into a new situation, and because of the programming, will default to picking out the negatives in this new, better situation. In no time at all, it will become shit. The better new job is now shitty boss, shitty hours, shitty whatever, looking for another one. As soon as they go, oh, this one will be better, shitty. Duh. It won't take more than a couple of days, couple of weeks. Okay. Because that's the way they've wired themselves. And I don't mean that as a way to condemn or whatever. That's part of the ignorance. We don't know how we're built. We don't know how our minds work. We don't know how things get conditioned or whatever. So we can't take control of the process. So the premise of the life purpose discovery process is to go from living accidentally to living intentionally, which is what most people think they're doing until they realize how much they're not in control of. And then they have to make a decision. Is this worth the effort? Okay. James, did I lose you? Let me pop back over on my screen here. I may have. His computer's down. Uh-oh. Oh, there he is. Ta-da! Questions, comments, complaints?
Trinity just said I still make that. And
that was the ramen comment from back. Okay, fair enough. Is that it? Okay.
That and Dave made it. He said super late, but I still made it.
Yay, Dave. All right. Dave keeps me in check. He's my alter ego. He's my perfect side. I'm the flawed side. Let's see. I do that all the time. Oh, Dave, hopefully you got my friend request over on your Facebook thing. Like, I don't know how I accidentally tripped over it and fell into it, but there was an image you had done a while back on like Donut Ninja or Donut Warriors or something like that. And that's because I didn't know if it was you. But Dave's quite the artist. He does all kinds of interesting things. I've said this to my wife in the past, and I'm going to say it to Dave. I would not want to be inside your mind with you. It's some cool art, really, really cool art. But yeah, interesting stuff. I think there was a guy with a big tongue licking a mirror or something. I don't know. They all kind of bled together. James, have you seen his page?
No.
Okay. If you have a moment, let's see. Let me jump back over here. There we go. Okay, so let's see. I don't know, James. You have to keep me in check with this. Was it last episode? I don't know. There was one where I was talking about when I first got involved in the art, right? Or just in martial arts in general, right? Because of my upbringing and that fear that was driving, right? Like I never, ever, ever wanted to live in terror like that ever again. I never wanted to have somebody have that kind of control or, fear inducement and all that, right? I was driven to this. I was driven to law enforcement and whatnot, just through that, never wanting to be in those kind of situations again, right? And so my belief, I hadn't really thought about it until a teacher had mentioned something like this. My belief was that learning this stuff was like armor. Like it was like, just the more I learned, the more it was going to be like armor. But that armor was like the conventional type of armor that we would think of, right? That whatever somebody threw at me, like they tried to punch me, kick me, whatever they did, right? It would just hit that armor, just like bounce off, right? And again, that's how my old self saw the strength that this would give me, right? As like I would be invulnerable, right? Again, it's expecting that whatever the attack was, right, would just bounce off, right? But after decades of doing this stuff, and certainly not done, but I've come to believe that true mastery is in flexibility. It's in resilience, the ability to spring back, right? It's that type of endurance that I've talked about, where Takuma Sensei taught on, right? That your ability to endure, to reset, needs to be the time it takes for you to reset needs to be reduced to no longer than the amount of time it takes for a puff of smoke to dissipate, to disappear. And if you were in for that episode, remember what I said. The Uda of that, the hidden side of that, was that the greater the wind, the greater the storm, the faster that puff of smoke dissipates. The calmer things are, the longer it takes. So what that really means is that when there's no stress, no pressure, you have the luxury of taking your time to get yourself back on track. But the hotter the moment, the harder the winds, that puff of smoke is gone in no time. And you don't have to smoke cigarette, cigar, pipe, whatever, to bring up a video of somebody doing it and just watch. Right? Talking about since they smoked. Okay? But it's flexibility, resilience. It's that type of endurance, right? It's adaptability. Okay. So what I came to believe, and again, it was another one of those confusing things because the teacher used this analogy, but I'm right there, right? That the marshmallow or the armor is more like marshmallow. Okay. What I mean by that is the opponent punches or attacks, runs into this armor and gets stuck. Doesn't bounce off, it gets stuck, right? You trap him because you didn't resist from an ego-based perspective, from a fear-based perspective, right? You just accepted it. Right? Just like the trauma and the stuff that is normally perceived as weakness from our past, injuries, whatever, right? That's a strength. Okay? Because we know how to handle it. We've survived it. We could just recognize that you survived it. You're still here. Right? Your body's adapted to it. Your mind's adapted to it. It protects you from it, keeps you from thinking about it, unless you've overridden that and you keep your adrenal system on high, on max, because you keep thinking about it. Okay? So, but if we learn from it, then like the very fact that this person wants to hurt us, right? And the more often you've been attacked by people and the more ways you've been attacked by people, right? The more you've been injured, those kind of things, right? The less should surprise you. Banpan Fukyo. No surprises. Of course, people are self-serving. They, in a crunch, they will act in their own benefit. But that's natural. If we're on a frickin' plane, what's the first thing they tell you during the emergency things? Right? When that parquet buttercup drops from the ceiling, right? And it's the oxygen is going to be flowing, right? What do? You put your own oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else, right? But we're wired for that anyway. Okay. What they do is they put some logic behind it to make sense out of it, because a lot of people wouldn't do it. They'd be struggling to put it on somebody else and then they'd pass out. And then that youngster or that older person or whatever that can't do it for themselves ends up fucking dying because compassion, sympathy, these kind of things that were engineered into us that are all good ideas. They're on the spiritual plane, but that's not what's necessary in that moment. Okay. So it reaches into and puts some logic, puts a logical overlay on something that's already there. The base animal instinct for self-preservation. Okay. So, but put it on yourself so that you're breathing properly. And that way your brain doesn't get foggy and you don't fucking pass out or die. And you can help those people that you actually care about, which is why we're training. Okay. But right, if we continue to sabotage ourselves and we continue to hold ourselves back, how is that helping the people that we're supposed to be like helping? Well, I don't want to make Honey mad. Well, Honey's only going to flip it on you later when you didn't train and you couldn't protect her against the guy who broke into your house and Honey got hurt or punched in the face or whatever. It's going to be your fault anyway. So how about if it's your fault while you're gaining the freaking skills so that if she's going to be mad at you, it really is your fault and not something they had to make up. Just a thought. Sorry. Anyway. See, my promise to my wife was honesty always. If If you're going to be mad at me, I actually did it. But it was with the best of intentions. Okay. So, a lot of people are, funny, ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Okay. Worried about somebody getting mad. Did you marry your parent? Bad life choices come in many flavors. All right. So look, here's how this changes everything. Okay. What it really comes down to is emotional control, right? Accept the fear. It's going to be there. Accept the confusion. Anytime we start something new, right? Bad guys coming at you. If you're not afraid, then your adrenal response is not going to kick in. If your adrenal response doesn't kick in, then the survival mechanisms that allow your brain to speed up, your muscles and your physical state to change, to make you as fast as you can be, as strong as you can be, and all that kind of stuff, and to operate with these mechanisms that this art points to, right? The art doesn't just teach you how to do moves. A lot of the stuff that we have it's founded on the natural state that we're in that survival mechanism, the warrior eyes, right? This butsugan kind of state, right? All kinds of things, right? We need that to happen, but it's not going to happen if fear doesn't motivate it, okay? Or anger. That'll work too, but anger is actually a fear-induced thing. Sorry, it is. We're angry because shit's not going our way, and we're afraid that we're going to lose control of things, or that somebody else is going to be seen in a better light. All kind, right? Examine what goes before your anger. Okay, you don't tell anybody. Okay, but the more clear you are, okay, the more purposeful and the more laser-like your actions are going to be, rather than shotgun. Okay. Everybody knows ready, aim, fire. Most people don't do that. Most people do fire, ready, aim, because they're afraid that if they don't, then shit won't get done. Okay. But other people, their fire is default to over planning, because if it's not perfect, they don't want to start. Other people default to escape mechanism, or escape mode, right? Fire is take off and right, hope it doesn't happen to them. And other ones, it's freeze, where they duck and cover, hoping that when they open their eyes, it will all have gone away. Like if you don't look, then it's not there. It's the same with not answering a phone when it's a bill collectors. Well, I made the fucking bill. Okay, there's troubled times. You can keep calling, dude. Hey, I know the game. You keep calling. You'll say give. I'll say and I don't have, whatever. But I'm working to change things. Okay. When things change and I can pay you, you'll be the second one to know. Okay. Now, if they're calling and I'm not paying, but I have the means to do it, then I'm reneging on an obligation. That is not responsibility. Okay. So let's call a spade, shall we? Right. So again, there's this emotional stuff, right? There's this emotional charge kind of thing behind that inferiority complex. If we could transmute it, then we go from emotional control, we go from emotional control, where our emotions and those kind of things are clouding judgment, or they're steering. I call it the 6-year-old steering things, right? And we just end up like putting bad karma on top of bad karma, right? But if we can gain emotional control equals tactical control. If we can stop wearing our emotions on our sleeves, whether it's in a boastful kind of way, like look at me, right? I got this level done rank, I got whatever. Okay, a lot of you guys that have been with me for a long, long time know that I hate using titles, but I had to accept that the use of titles was necessary, because especially in the martial arts world, just like in the medical world, right? People gauge proficiency based on image. Sorry, I don't fit it. Not 20 something. I do have six pack abs they're just covered up, right? I'm not young. I'm not, right? And they base it based on fucking level of rank, right? The number behind. That's why a lot of these motherfuckers lie. I'm a 24th degree black belt. You're a bullshitter from anyway. So no such thing in the Japanese system or in the Chinese or the Japanese or the Korean system, right? Run out at 10 because 10 is a return to zero. Well, how do we end up with 11th, 12th? We didn't. With Judan, Chimenkyo, Suimenkyo, Kamenkyo, we go right back to the Godai that we started with. But since Westerners flubbered it up and the Japanese started using those numbers because it was just not worth the freaking trial. Let's get to training. But it's, I don't have 11th Dan, 12th Dan, only because people say it. But just because you say it doesn't make it so. Call a dog's leg or tail a leg, but doesn't make it a leg just because you called it that. That works across a bunch of things too. So anyway, right? Emotional control equals tactical control. Because tactical control, if we have emotional control, then there's the emotions are going to fire no matter what. But the left brain, the scientific side, the cold, rational, logical observation, planning mechanism is in there. Okay. So if we can also stop trying to cover up the weaknesses or whatever, right? And there's that Huntsman says they talked about that making a name for oneself. Right? I do this because one, I've been charged with teaching. Two, this goes right back to my never wanting to be in fear of things, but the other driver was getting myself into a position and gaining the skills and knowledge so that I could teach other people how to not be victims. The subject matter has grown. However, right, I'm going to die someday, right? And I'm not trying to be the best in the Bujinkan. I'm not trying to be. It's not about proving anything. This is right? As long as people want to learn, I'll be here. But I don't need to be a teacher. And here's the thing about being a teacher: a lot of people with black belts like to say that they're martial arts teachers, and I go, "Oh, okay. So you have a school? No, I have a school. You teach in your backyard, whatever. I mean, you can teach wherever. A dojo is wherever you're teaching. How many students? Well, I don't have any students right now. Well, then you're not a teacher right now. Okay, you're not a teacher, right? And this comes from the academic world. Well, I'm a teacher. No, you have a teacher certificate. If you're not hired and you're not actively teaching, you're not a teacher. To be a teacher, you require students. To be a student, you actually have to be like actively trying to learn something and become proficient at it. A lot of people call themselves students, but there's people with an interest in something. They're listening to things. Part of them knows it's a lesson, but they're not trying to learn it. They're not doing anything with it long enough. How do I know? Well, I don't know. Some people can't help themselves but put up videos and shit. And I've been watching them for months and years. I don't see any difference in their proficiency. So they must either think that they have it as it is, or they stopped learning somewhere along the line. But see, online, you're not allowed to point those kind of things out because that would make somebody feel bad. Okay, well, in that case, we'll leave it up to the universe. Okay, karma's a bitch. Right, But without needing to prove anything, you become, this goes with the warrior's fear of death, or not fearing death, right? And the martial artist accepting fear as a part of it as well, right? So without needing to prove anything, you become 1, harder to hit, 2, harder to read, and 3, harder to beat. Okay? Your past no longer defines you. It refines you. It makes you a better you because you stop trying to get past it and you accept it as a part of what makes you who you are. It gives you some of the perspectives and skills and powers that you could really be using. Accepting your imperfections without ego is the ninja's ultimate mental weapon. Learning how to turn your limitations into strengths. A lot of people, they get hiding their strengths as limitations, right? Like, I could fake not being a good puncher, and then when he lulls in, right? But making my limitation a strength, like I'm not me, right? But like, I'm not that great of a grappler, but I'm going to pose like a grappler. What if this guy rushes me? Dude, if you pose like a wrestler, you're going to condition his responses. He's got to figure out how to out trick you. But he can't out trick you because you're not really a wrestler. Because you don't know what to look for coming from a wrestler. It's funny as shit. Anyway, so final lesson. Don't rush to prove yourself. Don't fear being less than others. Be the warrior whose deepest strengths are invisible. Okay? Again, just like I did this with Hatsumi Sensei's lessons, this one's based on the spirit of Takamatsu Sensei's lessons, as I picked up along the way. Okay? The one who hides his treasure deepest wins the longest war. Do you understand that? Your treasure are your resources. Not worried about anybody being better than me because nobody else is uniquely me. And if I'm trying to be the best me that I can be and do the most good that I can do, there's no first place, second place. I'm already in first place. I don't need to be the best ninjutsu teacher. I just need to be better than those who are looking for the next step up. Because I'm still working on my next step up. I'll finish that up with a story that Hatsumi Sensei has told since, I don't know, since I got on board, right? When he first met Takamatsu Sensei. That first meeting, he did nothing but fucking brag about all of his accolades, all the black belts that he had. He was afraid this teacher wouldn't take him, right? So he presented himself like, right? And I've told you in the past that Takamatsu Sensei, blew it off of the, yeah. Okay. But can you survive? But that's not this story. Apparently he kept doing it. And if you ever get a chance to see the Takamatsu memorial video Hatsumi Sensei did, that includes a lot of the video 8 footage or not video 8, the Super 8. It was old camera stuff, right? It was on there, right? Look at Hatsumi Sensei's taijutsu. Tell me you don't stand a chance. This is no disrespect to Hatsumi Sensei, because he knows. He's very clear. And if he can do it, we can all do it, right? And this was after decades of freaking martial arts training. I know, it's blasphemy. Anyway, so, but apparently he kept doing it. And it just pissed Takamatsu Sensei off. One time he just said, look, you're never going to be a master. The best you're ever going to be is a gadfly. You know what a gadfly is? It's one of those shit-eating flies that fly around horses and cows' asses, right? That offended him. Went away. And this was in the first meeting or two, give it 3, whatever, right? And he went home and he was fuming. And he had to come to this realization that, look, you want to train with this guy? You're going to have to suck it up. You're going to need to, like, shut up. You're going to need to learn something. Kept trying to prove everything they already knew. Ask a question, the why question to a student once who just kept fucking bragging. Why? Why do you want to learn ninjutsu if you're already that good? Why here? Why? Other than to be able to brag about having a black belt in ninjutsu. Why this if you're already that good? What are you afraid of? You afraid there's still cracks in your armor? You still afraid that there's techniques you're missing? Are you bored but you want to keep training? What is it? Right? So the realization he came to was that this master has already assessed me. And if the best I'm ever going to be is a gadfly, then I'm going to set out to be the best gadfly that I can be. And look what happened. But he had to get over himself first. Okay? So, here's a call to action for you. I'm going to encourage you to reframe your past limitations, your past weaknesses, your past trauma, your past injuries, all of the things that, or any of the things that you use currently as the reason why you can't. As something that, whatever, there's something that, even if you think it's a reason, it's not an excuse, because we all do, right? It's in the way. Whatever the reason is that we can't, or that we're going slowly, or that we're, whatever it is, right? Reframe it. What has it taught you? What do you know other than that you've survived it, which is a huge thing, right? Right? And how can it be used to move forward, right? So again, these lessons are critical to mastering the first level of training in the Togakure school, the Seishin Teki Kyoyo, right? This spiritual refinement, personal development, right? And they're critical to mastering the deeper, this deeper mental transformation. Right? And, you know, here's the shameless plug, right? Don't forget we have spring camp coming up, right? We're covering a lot of these things. But I mentioned the life purpose discovery process. James, I don't know if you can drop that into the chat thing before we sign off, so that anybody that is interested can take a look at it. And what else do we have? I mentioned the Ninja Mind. We'll do that. Yeah, those two are a good start. And anybody who wants to like really step up, then you can always shoot an email and schedule a complimentary coaching call, and we can discuss much deeper training. Okay. Anyway, let me flip my screen back over here. There we go. Awesome. Cool beans. So, questions, comments, complaints? I have broad shoulders. See? And if I can't field it, I'll pass it off to James. What do we got? Questions, comments?
I do not see any.
All right. Well, I either put them to sleep, or that would be a different putting them to sleep. I was just thinking euthanasia, but that wouldn't be a good thing. I killed them. Anyway, all right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up then. I'll have information out for what we're doing for Whiteboard Wednesday, but it's probably going to be wrapped around this KUDEN and disguising truth and or disguising limitations and strengths and that kind of stuff, all the way into Friday. Don't forget Friday. So we have a Friday masterclass. If you are a local student, there will not be a late class at the dojo, 7:30 to 8:30, because spring camp begins. For those who make it in early, will begin at 8 p.m. on Friday evening, May 2nd, and then we're training all weekend, so Saturday, Sunday. If you're coming in for training or if you are training virtually, please make sure you have at least a long staff to do the spear stuff. I'm planning on picking up just for extra stuff around the dojo because we have spear at the dojo, but I'm picking up some 8 or 10 foot dowel rods and whatnot for the spear work because I can always paint that section. But if you're coming in and you're bringing in your long staff or you're training virtually and you're doing it, then I mean, we can supply some, but if you could just take some colored electrical tape or something like that, you just need to be able to put it, give or take, within an inch or two of one end, not both ends, just one end, so we can designate which is the blade end as opposed to the blunt end, because a spear is a compound weapon. It's a combination weapon, right? It's a combination of a bladed or edged weapon and a impact weapon, right? So, and that will change how we do bofurigata and a bunch of things, right? But the focus, we're not doing tons with it, but the focus is going to be learning some very specific lessons from the spear that can be integrated into shorter weapons and our taijutsu, which will seriously ramp up our ability in that area as well. Okay. But just in case you got something long ass, available that, you won't be like hitting other people when you're trying to, hit the attacker. You won't be like, getting your weapon stuck in a tight space and whatever. Right. So anyway, last call, James. Anything? Questions, comments, complaints? Late highs?
Just Terrence said he Googled for what the Buddha taught book, and it's Wapala Rahula.
Yep, that's it. That's it. Yeah. He was actually named after one of the defilements. Parents saw a head on him, huh? I can't remember. I think you need to be careful in that one, because most of the stuff when I teach those classes, I give you the Japanese and I give you the Sanskrit, but I believe that the language you're going to find in that book is the Pali. So like karma will not be written out as karma; it will be kama, but not kama as in love. It'll be 2 M's. So kama, dharma will be dhamma. Those kind of things, right? So, and Pali was the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. That was his native tongue, or the way it was originally written down. So, it'll just take a little adjusting to get to. I can't remember if they have it like Dhamma, Dharma, whatever. But you're going to run into Pali a lot in that book. Okay, most of it's English, so you'll be good. All right, it'll be fine. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay. Anything else? Is that it?
Alan just said hi.
Okay, cool. All right. So James had a long, hard day, so we should wrap this up so that he doesn't pass out and bump his head on this camera or anything. You look tired, dude. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again next time. So hopefully this has helped. If not, I apologize for wasting your time. And no, wait, you stayed. You could have clicked off. Anyway, but if it did, at some point, if you're getting some value out of these KUDEN podcasts and whatnot, shoot me an email or leave a comment on there as to like what's changed for you, how it's helped, what you're getting out of these things. I'd really appreciate it. All right. That's it. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. I will talk to everybody again next time on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online